What's up, guys? I have been making action figures in Nomad Sculpt for 3D printing, and a lot of people want to know how I do it. So I'm going to use my Sailor Moon action figure to show you today how I did the hip and the leg joints. As a disclaimer, I'm not a professional at this. I kind of have just experimented and figured out my own way how to do this. There's probably other better ways, and it's really complex, but I'm going to do my best to show you guys how I do it in the most simplified way possible. So I'm going to start with the hip joint. For the purpose of this tutorial, you'll need to start with a fully sculpted figure that you want to add moving parts to. And nothing here is merged together yet, so you're going to need to have legs and a torso as separate objects. The first thing you'll need to do is add a cylinder where you want the legs to swing and rotate on a hinge. And you can test this by pinning the gizmo to your cylinder. So I have the gizmo tool active, I've selected the cylinder, and then I press pin. Now when I select the legs, I can see how they will move and rotate around that pinned cylinder. And you can move that cylinder around to find the best place that you want it to rotate. This looks good to me, so I'm going to leave it here. And some important parts about the anatomy that we're starting with here. The leg pieces need to have a gap between them, and the tops of the legs need to be just vaguely rounded around where that point of rotation is. And then the torso has a backside that extends behind the legs. I use this as a stop so the legs don't rotate backwards. Anyway, we have all of our starting pieces, so we need to cut a space into the torso where the leg pieces can sit and rotate. So to do that, I clone the leg, and then I take that clone and inflate it. This slider can inflate or deflate as much as you want. I'm going to just set it at 2%, and that will allow for some clearance around the leg piece fitting into the torso. You can opt for more or less clearance. I just personally like 2%. Now with the gizmo tool, I still have it pinned to that cylinder, and I'm going to set the snap radius to 10 degrees. I'm going to clone that inflated leg and rotate it 10 degrees, then clone and rotate 10 degrees, etc. until I've gone through that full range of motion that I want, which for me is about 90 degrees. And actually for this last one, I'm going to turn off snap radius and put it more precisely where I want it. Now I have an inflated leg clone placed throughout the entire rotation. I'm going to select all of these clones, hide them, and then select the torso, which is not hidden, and I'm going to Boolean merge them. This only cut out one side, but that's okay because my figure is symmetrical and I'm going to mirror it later. When I bring my leg piece back, we can see it fits perfectly in there with room to rotate forward and back. However, it can't move straight out to the side. This means that as it is right now, these pieces would be impossible to assemble. So I'm going to clone it and inflate it one more time, and I'm going to move that clone straight to the side to cut off this lip. I'm also going to just shape it for a smooth cut. That's probably not really necessary, but I just think it looks nicer. So I take that clone, hide it, and Boolean merge again to cut it out. Now the leg piece will be able to fit in and out for assembly. And I actually went in with X-ray, and I can see there is one little area it still hits, so I went back and made one more clone to cut that part off. Now that I have this leg space completely cut out, I'm going to mirror the torso. So I go to the mirror menu, I make sure these arrows go from right to left, and then I press mirror, keep topology. Now we need to add the little pins that the legs will snap onto. So with the gizmo tool active, I'm going to select that cylinder, and I'm going to add a ball, and you want to make sure that you have checked this box that says on gizmo. That's going to add my ball exactly onto my cylinder, and it'll be perfectly centered. I'm going to put the ball on the end of the cylinder, and then I also make this cylinder one-sided. You just want to make sure that it goes fully into the torso and into the ball. Next, I need to clone these and make them bigger so that I can use that to cut out a hole into the leg. The way that I like to do this is I clone this ball and I go up to the material menu, turn on blending, and turn down the transparency. This is going to make it so I can kind of eyeball the size for the clearance. So I kind of just make it bigger, and you can definitely measure this. About 1/4 millimeter is generally a good amount of clearance. I'm just going to eyeball it And I'm going to do the same thing with the cylinder. I'm going to clone it, make it transparent, and resize it. This one I would recommend eyeballing. Just make it almost as big as the original ball. Almost as big or as big, but no bigger than the original ball. And I am actually going to add in one more cylinder here. And I added this on the wrong side. Make sure you add all your shapes on the same side. It will make your life so much easier. So I set the snap radius to 90 degrees and rotate this cylinder so it is front facing. And then with the gizmo tool, I'm stretching this to basically cut a U shape out of the ball and cylinder to give it some more flex. And of course we want to stretch this so that it is wide enough to cut through the entire ball. So now I want to take this U shape cut and hide it and select the small ball and small cylinder, not the transparent big ones, and I Boolean merge these three together. Now we have a pin that will eventually be merged with the torso, and I want to take these enlarged ball and cylinder transparent pieces and cut them out of the leg. So I hide them and merge them with the leg. And that pretty much is the hip joint. You should end up with hips with pegs sticking out as one piece, and then legs with the holes in them as separate pieces. You can skip to the end of the video if you want to see the hip joints printed and assembled, but now I'm going to show you how I made the knees. So each of these legs I have fully merged together, however we're going to be splitting them into two pieces, an upper part for the thigh and a lower part for the calf. So again, we're going to start by adding a cylinder where we want the rotation point to be. I like this to be just above the knee where I can have the top piece kind of shape down around it. And your leg shape might not look exactly like mine. What's important here is to have a thigh that tapers in at the bottom, a calf that tapers in at the top, and a kneecap that spans across the two of them. So to split this leg into an upper and lower part, I'm using the split tool and the lasso, and we want our viewpoint to be looking straight down the cylinder. And we're just going to draw a line that goes around the kneecap, rounds off the back of the thigh, and then goes up and around to just encompass the entire top half of the leg. So after that split, that is roughly the shape that I want for the top half. The bottom piece should still have the kneecap fully attached to it, and I'm going to use the trim tool and the lasso to cut off this extra little bit and just leave a flat, slightly rounded off shape in the back. Back up to the thigh, I want this fully tapered in at the bottom, so this like little lip that sticks out needs to go. I'm going to voxel remesh this at a fairly high resolution, around 200, and keep sharp edges needs to be checked. And now I can go in and use the smooth tool to just smooth that lip out. And while I'm here, I'm just going to smooth all of these edges. You want to avoid smoothing around the knee. That part in the front where it fits together at the knee, I want that to be a clean, almost invisible line when the leg is straight. So I do the same thing to the lower part. I voxel remesh and smooth, and it's important to keep sharp edges checked so we can keep that knee line clean. This is what it will look like if you do not check keep sharp edges. So keep that checked and do not smooth those edges. And I just want to test out this rotation point, so I'm going to take the gizmo tool and pin it to the cylinder. And we do that by having the gizmo tool active, selecting the cylinder, and pressing pin. And now we can see how the legs will move when they bend. I also need to connect the calf to the pin piece. Right now, the pin only goes through the thigh. So let's clone this pin, and I'm going to make this shape bigger and shorter. So from the front view, this should be in the center of the thigh, and it should be about 1/3 of the width. When we look from the side, and if you're going to move this, make sure that you move both cylinders together. We want to keep those together, but from the side, it should be almost the size of the full thigh, but we want it moved back a little bit. So there's a gap between the cylinder and the knee, and then it extends all the way to the back of the thigh, and then it also needs to dip down into the calf. This looks okay. I'm just going to adjust the top leg slightly to kind of cover and match up with it a little bit more. And now that it's in a good spot, I'm going to clone it and Boolean cut this piece out of the top leg. And for now, we don't need to make it any bigger. I'm just going to cut this shape exactly as it is out of the top. And so that's left like a little flap here. I'm going to trim that off just with the trim lasso tool. And I apologize, this is so complicated, but I swear I've simplified this process as much as possible for this tutorial. Please bear with me. Okay, so anyway, I am going to rotate the leg now. I still have the gizmo pinned to the cylinder, and I have the snap radius angle set to 45 degrees. I want my knee to be able to bend 90 degrees back, so I'm going to make sure that when it bends 90 degrees, these pieces can still fit together and not intersect. So I'm going to clone this top leg and Boolean cut it out of the bottom leg while it's at 90 degrees. This kind of added a little curve cut, so I went back and smoothed that out. And you can see now it can rotate without colliding with that upper leg. The next step is to cut some clearance holes. So this big cylinder will be attached to the calf. So we need to cut a corresponding hole out of the thigh. So I clone it, I increase the size slightly, and I Boolean cut that out of the thigh. Now I can take this original cylinder and merge it with the calf because we want those to be one piece. And this pin that goes through everything also needs a hole, and that hole needs to run through both leg pieces. So I clone it, I increase the size slightly, and then I clone it again so one can be cut out of the top leg and one can be cut out of the bottom leg with Boolean merge. And that is pretty much it for the knee. We should have 3 pieces for each leg, the top thigh, the bottom calf, and then this pin that will go through both of them. So now that all the pieces are modeled, I want to show you how I assemble these. So here they all are 3D printed. Obviously, you stick the 2 leg pieces together and then you stick the peg through the hole. Hopefully you left enough clearance space so that it fits. If not, just reprint this peg slightly smaller. That's a very easy fix. Next, I just trim this peg as close to the surface of the leg as I can, and you'll need to affix it to the outer parts only. So gluing the peg to the thigh, but not to the calf. I do that with a small amount of resin and a UV flashlight to cure it in place. You could also use super glue. Just make sure you're only gluing the outer part. If you let any of that glue seep into this hole and get to the centerpiece, it's not going to be able to move. So we want to glue these outsides and then sand them down. And once you add primer and paint, ideally that original hole should be invisible. The hip joint is pretty self-explanatory. You're just going to snap each leg onto its peg, and there you have moving action figure legs. This was a lot to fit into one video, so I only did these 2 joints. If you want to see how I did other joints, or if there's anything else you've seen me do and you want to know how I did it, please ask in the comments. I would love your ideas. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I hope this helps you.